guys. It is in honor of International Women's Day that I felt it be a good idea to jump in here tonight. I've just gotten off my group call with my clients this evening, and we were talking about teaching them about understanding your cycle, and how to actually use that as a superpower and how to use it to your advantage. And hopefully this is working, because it says it might not be working. Okay, the joys of Facebook. And how to use it to your advantage. And so what I thought I would just do is share with you some of the things that I understand around our cycle, because it is our superpower. It is something that we can use. We have hey Jess, we have this superpower of our hormones, which comes every month, and we get a monthly report card. And it tells us so much about our own health. And it's really important that we tune in and we actually know what is happening with our cycle. We understand our cycle. We understand the signs and symptoms of a good cycle, a bad cycle, and we really appreciate that. And also honor each phase of our cycle, because we are differently hormonally every single day of the month, and we can use that to our advantage. But if we don't understand it, it will actually work against us, and that's really important to know. Yes, if you have questions as I'm going, please just pop in the chat. But I want you to first of all just think about, with your cycle and understanding your hormones and your period and all the things that went with that as you were growing up as a teenager. How were you educated about that? How do you currently feel about your cycle and your period? Is it, how was your period and female anatomy and sex as well, or spoken about and educated? How were you educated about that? Because I think this is, that this is something that gets passed down. I know for me personally, my mum was a nurse, and she taught me about my period, and she used the right, the right, correct names for things, and I was taught there was no fluffy names for anything, but she was very factual about it. But she didn't teach me about ovulation. She didn't teach me about my cycle, really understanding what was going on hormonally for me, and it made a big impact because I just didn't get it. And there was consequences of that further down the line for me, in terms of making the wrong choices for my health, trusting and not asking questions because I didn't really understand my body. So I want you to think about it, and just, pop in the comments as well. What did you learn? How did you learn about your period and your cycle? I also went to a Catholic school, which was don't get pregnant. And that is your period, and that is it. There was no conversation around understanding what ovulation is. What do we need to look out for? What's a healthy cycle? What's a healthy period? All these things that are really important, because if we start to look at each month, we have this report card that comes to us. We can also look at the report card and read the report card and actually go, okay, well, if my period isn't showing up healthy, if I'm getting PMS symptoms, I'm having period pain or period issues, that's telling me something about my health. And there's actually something that we have our own power, and this superpower that is us as women we can use, because we can then go and do something about it, and we have that in our capability. And unlike men who don't have any indicators in terms of a monthly feedback loop, we have this power and we can use it. And so I want you to think about, how was your relationship to your cycle? What is your current relationship to your body, to your cycle? Do you even know what your cycle is telling you? Do you track your cycle? Do you take notice? This is the same as looking at your poop and wee. It's really important, and these can tell us things. about us. And what I want you to understand as well is when we're looking at this, on average, 28-day cycle, a normal cycle is between 26 to 35 days. Anything less than that or more than that, I'm starting to think there's things going on hormonally. But that cycle is, we're different every single day, which means that our brain functions differently. We have different nutritional needs. We have different energy requirements. And so we're not going to be the same every single day. We're not like this 24-hour clock that men are like, where we can get up, this is the bit I used to struggle with. I used to be able to, my partner would get up and do heaps of shit done. And I could not do that every single day of my cycle. It's not how I operate. It's not how my body works. And there are times that I am much more effective at doing things, and there's times I'm much better at being social or ticking things off the to-do list or going inward, depending on where I'm at. Just other than the period part of my cycle, I really had no idea what else happened, and for years after. I also thought everyone's cycle was the same length and everyone ovulated on the same day, which is completely not the case. Everyone is a little bit different. And so I want you to think about, an egg, that we are born with all our eggs. So you are actually technically inside your grandmother, which sounds really crazy, but that's the truth. And it takes 100 days for an egg to fully mature. And when we go through that cycle, the first day of your cycle is your period. Technically, that's how it's measured. It's technically not, but your first day as a measurement is your period. And the lining of your uterus sheds, and then that uterine lining will thicken. And ovulation happens when the follicles actually burst out of the ovary, and the egg waits for fertilization. If the fertilization doesn't happen, the lining will then shed again. And that's the cycle that continues. Now, in that cycle, we have ovulation, which typically will happen around day 14, but everyone is a little bit different. We have hormones that will fluctuate for that to happen. And then we also have our progesterone, which is a beautiful hormone that keeps the egg will keep the egg or the uterine lining in place if an egg is fertilized. That will peak at about day 21. And all of these hormones are really important. And if we want to test our hormones, knowing when we ovulate and knowing the details of our cycle is really important, because we need to be able to put the pieces of the puzzle together. That's the first clue. And so the way that I look at the cycle is in seasons. And so winter, spring, summer, and autumn. And our winter is our period. Our spring is that period between when our bleed finishes and ovulation. Summer is ovulation, and then autumn is post-ovulation through to before you get your period, which is usually typically the longest part of your period. And this is really important because each phase we have different needs and different capabilities. And if we start to honor this, we actually can start to balance our hormones, because we're not trying to push and strive and burn, and we will ultimately burn out. If we know we're going to have periods where we are more energetic, which is generally around ovulation, whereas winter, think about winter is when we go inward and retract, yes? And so ovulation, our body temperature also jumps. Now, one thing I want you to know is when someone is put on an oral contraceptive pill, it totally takes your hormones offline. You do not ovulate. The firing between your pituitary gland in your hair, in your brain, and your ovaries stops. And so when women are put on the oral contraceptive pill, to fix the problem, it does not fix it. It takes it offline, so there is no hormonal issue, because you're not making hormones, you're just taking synthetic hormones, and your natural production of your hormones from your ovaries stop, which is why they will give the pill to people with PCOS or endometriosis, because if you're not making those hormones and you're not going to have a bleed, often they will give the IUD, sorry, to someone with endometriosis or fibroids to stop the bleeding, but it's not actually addressing the underlying problem. So it will stop the pain, it will stop the bleeding, but it will not address the underlying problem. Now, the IUD, you can still technically still ovulate. You don't always, particularly in that first year, and it is not as bad as the oral contraceptive pill. For me personally, I had a condition called post-pill PCOS, where after I was on the pill for 10 years, I actually had crazy post-pill acne, and didn't get a period for like, I think like a year almost, and then it was very irregular. I had, and they did a scan and they found a lot of cysts on my ovaries, which was what I would call now post-pill PCOS, because eventually I actually healed it and it went away. And so it's a very different situation now. I think I'm probably prone to be more androgen heavy if I don't really look after myself. But that is what happened. Now, the other thing you want to know about the pill is that it depletes us in a lot of vitamins and minerals, and it degrades the lining of the gut. And so I was on it for 10 years, and because I was on it for 10 years, what happens is, because you're not making your own hormones from your ovaries and your pituitary gland isn't firing to communicate to your ovaries, when you go off the pill, you don't get a period because you're not ovulating, and it takes time for that communication pathways to open up. Now, for those pathways to actually fully develop, we don't fully develop them. They're not fully firing until the age of 24. Most women are put on the pill at like age 14, 13, maybe at the latest 18. It might be for contraception, it might be for acne, but we are not put on it. We're put on it too early, so then if we're on it for a long period of time, that firing, those pathways actually don't fully develop. The tracks in the snow don't become full grooves, like deep tracks, and so then there is a problem. And that's one of the biggest problems with the pill, besides all the deficiencies and you can go and look up PubMed, oral contraceptive pill deficiencies, things will come up, depletes us in very many vitamin nutrients. And so this is a problem over a long period of time because it causes dysbiosis to the gut, which is an imbalance of gut bacteria, and ultimately that will impact the balance of our hormones, the overall health of us. And we don't get told these risk factors of it when we're put on it. Now, I'm not telling you, this is a disclaimer, for contraceptive purposes, you've got to make your own decision. But I feel we need to be educated more about our cycles and understanding our bodies and the risk factors of these things before we're actually told about them, and not just being put on, like, just take this, you'll be fine. Because there's also increased risks of stroke, particularly for particular conditions, for certain type of women. There is a connection with depression. I know when I went on the pill when I was 18, I got depressed, and I had a doctor laugh at me actually when I said, I feel like I'm going crazy, and she laughed at me, and I walked out in tears after that doctor. I was like, fuck you, actually. And as soon as I went off it, I felt normal again. And I've heard so many people say that they feel not right. The irony of being on the pill is you actually lose your sex drive. You don't. And here's another little fact. There's been research that has been done looking at our ability, or who women would pick as a mate from a genetically good match. Has actually been shown, and I don't know how they've done this, but they've done this in a way to go, we would actually genetically pick someone different because of the smells when we're not on the oral contraceptive pill, because our body is tricked into essentially being pregnant or not being fertile. So who we would pick in a mate when we're on the pill is very different to who we would pick when we are not on the pill. It's interesting, right? And so I look back at a previous relationship that I met someone who, you know, wasn't really someone I probably want to, you know, have children with. And I was like, oh, that makes sense that I was attracted to him in a way because I was on the pill when I met him. So interesting, yeah? That's a little side note. What else is going to say? So a healthy cycle. A healthy cycle is really interesting. A lot of women don't know what a healthy cycle is, and they just put up with signs and symptoms, and it can be really painful. But I just want you to, like, you know, that's not normal. Period pain is not normal. PMS symptoms are not normal. Our period should show up drama-free. We shouldn't be getting PMS symptoms. We shouldn't be getting crazy moods. Our period color should be bright red in color. We shouldn't have large clots. We should have a cycle length between 25 to 35 days. And why does it keep saying my key frame rate is low? I don't really understand what that means. I don't know how to fix it. So sorry guys if you're watching this and it's really laggy. We should be ovulating. That's a sign of health. Optimal health is ovulation. If we're not ovulating, then we have a problem. Often women, when they lose a lot of weight, or if they have eating disorders, or if they over-exercise, they will, or if they're super stressed, will not ovulate because it's not safe. And ovulation, there needs to be safety in the body for there to be ovulation, for there to be a creation of a child, which is ultimately what the body wants to do, wants to reproduce, whether we want it to or not. And so if that is not happening, we've got to say, well, what's happening for the body to be that. Now, it also is very helpful in terms of contraception, because if you know when you're ovulating and in tune with your body, you're going to take extra precautions and be a lot more conscious of it. And a lot of women don't even know when they are ovulating and don't have that awareness, you know. And periods, you shouldn't have pain during ovulation. And a period is normally 4 to 7 days, maximum 80 mils blood, 50 to 80 mils worth of blood loss in that period of time. To give you a concept, a super tampon is about 10 mils of blood. So if it's full and soaked. So that gives you some like ballpark of what that is. And then when we're looking at our cycle, when there are, and I've talked about this on other videos, like what certain things mean. But what I want to, like, you know, if we've got heavy periods or PMS or endometriosis, and there's other videos in this group about this, they can mean certain things. It's telling us that there's certain things going on. There's inflammation if we have period pain. If we have endometriosis or heavy periods or PMS, there's estrogen dominance or possibly low progesterone. Hey Velvet. So it's telling us things about our body, and we don't need to put up with this. We can have a healthy cycle. We can have a healthy period. It can be drama free. But a lot of the time we've put up with this for such a long time that it gets to a disease state, and then it is a lot harder to address. But it's not impossible. Yes. The other thing is when there's conditions like PCOS, it can be excess androgens. This can also be a problem. Progesterone plays a really big role in healthy cycles. So having good amounts of progesterone, and a lot of women don't. If they're going into that perimenopausal stage or into the menopausal stage, progesterone can also play a role in that. The estrogen starts to fluctuate, but progesterone plays a very important role in our cycles because it balances our estrogen. And it has a beautiful herb called Vitex or chasteberry, which is a really good herb to increase progesterone or reduce PMS symptoms. Now, you can take this without testing, but I personally feel that progesterone should be measured. It typically will be at its peak typically 7 days post ovulation, which is why it's important to know when you're ovulating, because then you can measure your progesterone and get the reading correct. Yes, if you are on the have a IUD in, you can't really measure blood hormone levels correctly because the IUD will change it, and you need to do saliva. A lot of people don't know that either. So when we're working with our cycle, even if you're on the pill, you can still start to do it. But working with your cycle, understanding that we've got a winter, a spring, a summer, autumn, and we have different capabilities of our cycle. So in winter, our winter is the time to go inward, time to reflect, think about what you're like when you're in winter. Our energy is our lowest, our body temperature is at our lowest, so we need to actually honor that and actually really work within that. I teach all of this content, this stuff to my clients for this reason, and it does make a big difference. Our spring is sort of like creating a new, like think about a new spring. We're starting to get a bit more spring in our step, where energy is starting to build. We're actually starting, it's a really good time to plan and be creative. It's also a good time to come up with new ideas, like to have a bit more energy, to do a bit more exercise. We don't have as much energy requirements at this time of our cycle. Our summer is when we're at our peak. Think about our summer. It's like the party phase. We can do a lot more. We can push a lot more. We can be social. We can collaborate. We can negotiate. We can have sex with our partners. Please, like, take contraception if you're not trying to get pregnant into account. But we will have a higher sex drive as a result. And we'll have peak energy. It's like dancing all night, like that high intensity. We can lift heavier weights. We can push a bit more, right? Eating foods that are, our bodies at our warmest, so we can have cooler foods. We can have lots of salads, things like that are going to be good. We're going to want to eat lots of things that are good for our liver, yes? To support our liver, like our things in our cabbage family, like lots of cruciferous vegetables, like cabbage and cauliflower and broccoli and all those things with lots of fiber in them. So our bowels are still moving. And then we move into the autumn phase, which is often the longest phase. And there's sort of two parts to this. There's part of like the ripple effect, the leftover effect from our summer. But as we move closer to our period, this is the really important bit, and starting to realize that you can actually do a lot more to support your body. Our body temperature rises because it's our egg, we've ovulated, and we need to keep that egg alive. So our temperature jumps, and it's waiting for fertilization. If it doesn't get fertilized, then the progesterone will drop off, and then we'll have a period, right? But we have higher energy needs, so we actually need more food. We need a bit more substance. We need more protein, not eating crap. And the biggest thing I see women do is they will try and do the same food day in, day out, calorie restriction. During the autumn is not the time to calorie restrict. It may be intermittent fasting if you aren't struggling with your cycle, but if you are, I wouldn't recommend it. I'd only be doing a 12-13 hour fast max in this time of your cycle, and making sure you're getting all the good stuff in, but just more of it, so you're feeling full and satiated, so you're not looking for the sugar and you're craving all the crap, because you're getting in what you need, your energy needs. Maybe having some more root vegetables, like some roasted pumpkin, you know, those types of things. That is what you need. So that is really, you know, there's so much more to this, but starting to unpack it and go, how do I start to honor my cycle and do it in a way that is actually going to utilize my energy needs at the time? So utilizing when I've got high energy, and when I don't, you know, like leading into that part, second half of your cycle, some people are exhausted because they've not, that their energy is all over the shop. They don't have the right resources. They're nutritionally depleted. But we need to also honor that we do need rest, and we do need a bit more, and we do need a bit more food in that period of time, of the right foods, yeah? And so tracking your cycle is the first step, like going through tracking your cycle, having a really good app that's going to track your cycle, all your signs and symptoms is going to be the first step of actually addressing this. But when we start to do this, when we start to live in a way that is honoring our cycle, when we start to eat in a way that nourishes our body and like helps us feel, and we have support going, making sure that all our levels, our vitamins and minerals, that our gut's working properly, this can actually be our superpower that men don't have, which is why I wanted to share it today, because I'm like, we have this amazing body that speaks to us, in whispers, that we can actually go, okay, well, if the thing's not right, it's my responsibility to do something about it before it gets further down the track where it turns into a chronic disease, right? Don't wait like me, if you guys know my story, where I lost the kidney and until I got the message and got the slap across the face. Yes, so we can use this to our advantage and really start to understand. When we're talking about it in regards to fertility, it's the same. It's really honoring your body, resting when you need, eating the right foods, making sure that our blood sugar levels are really stable, that our nutrient levels, particularly important for preconception care, are really high and are at the right levels. And one of my pet grieves and pet hates is that people for preconception care go and talk to doctors, and doctors don't do anything really, except for maybe check a couple of levels like your iron and your folate. That's important, but there's nothing else until things start to go wrong. And it's like, what do you need as a full tank to go in, to make a healthy baby? Not just what do you need to make a baby, what do you need to make a healthy baby? And what's your cycle like? And is the health of your cycle really working well? There's another whole rabbit hole for me to go down. I've done other videos on this group about preconception care. But this is really what we can use it to our advantage, and really honoring it. It takes time. It's not going to be perfect. There's some really amazing books out there that people have written, and I can't off the top of my head think of the book that I'm trying to think of around this, but which I've learned from many resources. And when I learned this, it actually really changed the game for me, because I was like, I stopped beating myself up. I started to understand that I had different capacities. I was like, oh, there's times I can push, and then there's times when I can't. There's times when I do need to rest, and this will explain it. And when you can give that to yourself, you're in this ebb and flow where life becomes a lot easier. You're not pushing and resisting against your biology. It makes a big difference. So what I would love to know, like, what's your biggest takeaway out of, if you're listening to this, what questions have you got? I can endeavor to answer them. And if you have any questions or you would like to know more, please reach out to me. Please send me a DM or drop something in the comments. And what are you going to take from today when you watch any video in this group? What are you going to take from today and actually start to go, oh, I need to action that? Because we can hear these things, but then what are you going to do with that information so it's actually implemented, so you can actually start to make the changes that you're looking for? And that's with anything. We can consume so much content. We're so in a world where content is exposed to us all the time. I say that as I realize I don't have my blue light blocking glasses on, right? But we need to actually action it and do something. And it's only those little 1%ers that we do every day going, I'm just going to action this today. What am I going to do? That little 1%. If we do 1% every single day, that's how many days are in a year? 365 days. Okay, so less than 1% every single day, like just a little tiny upgrade, less than 1%, we will have completely changed in a year. We can make such a big impact in a year, but it's the tiny little things, and go, okay, what am I going to action today? And so if you're watching this, let me know what resonated, what landed with you, and what's your biggest takeaway, and what are you actually going to do with it? What are you going to start to implement it there? And when we actually declare something, there's something real that happens. It turns into something that was untangible into something that was tangible. I hope you found that helpful. I think it's a beautiful thing to celebrate today. I've been meaning to do this live all day today, but it's taken me, I've been busy. But yeah, I hope you have a beautiful night, and I will see you guys soon. Ciao.